Welcome to Fight Factor, the debut episode of the show. I am one of the hosts. I am Lou Betya, joined as I will be each and every Monday by my guy, the Dogfather. This is not a typical betting show. This is more us asking the capping questions that matter as the week goes on, from a side perspective, a total perspective, props, all of that. It's our mindset and our approach as to how we get into it. I'm having deja vu. I feel like I've said this before. Dogfather, my guy, how are you? You had a decent week last week. How do you feel about this card? And welcome to the channel officially.
Thank you very much. Yeah, last week was a good week. Can't complain. Things have been consistent. So yeah, excited for the week. Welcome to the channel. I'm excited. Main thing for me is, we're going to be breaking down the fights, but with some specificity and how I'm planning on trying to get my edge, my angle on the fight, see if I can find a perspective from a total, and see if there's anything, that's interesting or any research that I can find about these fighters. And, that's the question you got to ask yourself before you make a bet, is why you're making it and how the fight's going to play out. And sometimes you don't have the answer to those questions, but we're going to at least try and ask them.
Well, and that's why we're here. So without further ado, and let's not, there's one bet we never need to talk about, and that was the under on the Brundage Al Hassan fight from last week. RIP, the biggest bet I've made on a fight all year. But we move on to this week.
You know what? Most importantly, though, it was at the price that you paid for that bet. It was one of the better bets you made this year too, despite it not cashing. That's how it goes sometimes.
Minus 145 was insanity for me. But we're back in Vegas, and since the whole idea of the show is to ask questions before we even get to the first fight, I'd like to ask you a question on a higher level about a card like this. My question to you is, this is an outlier where I think we only have two fights where we have like an under 1.5. That's the Steve Garcia fight. And the main event, under 2.5. It's juiced. It's a 5-round fight. But, and I think the Hyder Emil fight, 2.5, is minus 115. But every other fight on this card is juiced to the over. When you see a card like that, does it make you want to attack plus money unders more, or does it make you sharper on the sides?
Well, I'm historically an under better, so a lot of the times that's kind of where I find like I have a better read on under 1.5s. More specifically, like my 2.5 record, in my opinion, isn't as good as my 1.5, even on UFC fights. So personally, I'm an under better. So, and I like betting finish props. So that's kind of my opportunity to either switch my angle or just kind of avoid a lot of these totals and pass on most of them in general, because historically I know that I'm a better under better, or I like betting unders, but there could be value on some of these overs that, I might have to just, if I have a read on it, I got to take it.
Yeah, Big Steve and I were actually talking about that exact same thing. My under 1.5 record's pretty good. My under 2.5 record's horrible. And it's funny because it seems like if it just even gets to the 8-minute mark, it's the most painful over you've ever watched in your life. So just an interesting little higher level thing that I always look at when I see a card with so many overs. But let's get to the first.
I was talking about this the other day with Steve, is that sometimes like you see a total set at 2.5 and everybody bets the under 2.5 at minus 180, right? But then if you look at historically, the fight finishes in, under 7.5 minutes historically for both of the fighters that they're betting an under 2.5 at juice. It finishes in round 1 or under 1.5 in a lot of the circumstances, and the under 1.5 is like, 40, like 40%. Yeah, it's like 40%. Why wouldn't you just bet the under 1.5 and get a plus money and not have to stake as much? It's like, so yeah, I prefer under 1.5s. I'll take an under 1.5 alt total more so than I will take a 2.5.
Well, let's get to the first fight of the night here. We're at the heavyweight division. Got Muhammad Usman coming in against Thomas Peterson. Usman coming off a loss to Mick Parkin. Peterson coming off his debut loss to Jamal Pogues. I'll start. I'll pose the first question of the night to you, as I don't have any strong feelings on this fight one way or the other. Can you trust Peterson as this fight goes on? Because I know what your lean is here. Do you like Peterson to look good as this fight goes on a fight that probably goes the distance at a fairly high clip?
No, I don't. I don't like his cardio, actually. But, he's a young heavyweight. Like, I feel like these guys make improvements. Like, he looked a little bit heavier than he historically has. I mean, I looked at his Instagram. He looks like he's in better shape. These type of guys, they have performances like that, in their UFC debut, and they tend to come out and look a little bit better their next time. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a better performance from Peterson. And it seems like he has a lot of the wrestling upside here. And we don't really know what Usman looks like, when he gets flat down. But when Peterson does get on top of guys, he's pretty good. I was shocked that he didn't finish some of the singles he had on Pogues. Pogues showed like very impressive balance for being such a big guy. I feel like if Peterson gets onto a single like he got on to Usman, I mean, there's a pretty good chance he ends up on his back. So I am leaning Peterson. I just don't know if I'm going to get there. I need a bigger line personally. So I guess the question for you is, what does this look like in round 3?
Well, I think that's predicated on if Peterson has wrestling success. And I'll add this. The one thing, I don't like betting Usman ever under any circumstances. And the reason is he's probably the finished product at this point. I think with Usman, there's not going to be improvements. Kind of know what we're getting. He's going to be low volume. He's not going to be super impressive in any regard other than like he's just kind of a big dude. But he's not the big guy here. Peterson is. And Peterson's the guy that, struggled early in his Contender Series fight, but then showed some nice submissions and some good grappling and tenacity, which you like to see. His cardio did look all right. I mean, he came out of the second round and immediately was like, let's go. I mean, for a heavyweight, looks better than average. I'd have to think if this thing does get deep and Peterson had grappling success, Usman's going to be just ragged, and it may take very little to get him down in the third round. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen enough of Peterson, I guess, to know deep in a fight, is he willing to just lay and pray? We know that doesn't score well anymore, but Usman just doesn't fight a style that judges like at all anyway. So I almost think lay and pray would be the way to pull this in the third round. So I think Peterson would have the advantage, but I'm with you from a betting perspective. If some money comes in on Usman, maybe I'm interested. Maybe even look at like a Peterson 3 decision, which I don't love those props, to be honest, but in general. But if Usman's gassed, maybe Peterson can lock him in a sub. But better fights on this card to target, I believe, including this one where I know you have a bet. Luana Carolina moving up in weight, which is very important in this fight. That's going to be one of the factors. This is up at 135. Luana Carolina against Lucy Pudova. This is like the best picture of her ever, because every other picture on Google is like very unflattering to her, to say the least. So she should talk to Google and get that stuff like improved. But yeah, I'll let you start on what question's important here. I can tell you right now, there's only one side I'd ever bet.
So before we get into this, I think that Tapology is wrong. I think this fight's actually at 125.
Okay.
And I know that a lot of folks have mentioned the size factor here, but Pudilova's fought at 125 before. So I don't know how. I mean, I think she is more physical, I will say, but I don't think it's, to be honest, that big of a factor. Like, I feel like if Carolina was moving up to 35, I wouldn't think it would be a big deal. She's a big flyweight, So
UFC's website says flyweight. So
yeah,
I guess Tapology probably is wrong here.
Yeah, Tapology is wrong. So by the way, it's at 25. So Pudilova is dropping down. So she's going to be the one that's depleting herself, who's been fighting at 35. which could be good or bad. It depends on, how you feel about it. It might not be the best thing. I mean, I'm not even going to get into it, but can Pudova stuff takedowns?
No.
Question.
The answer is no. She can't. And Carolina, I mean, it's not like she's doggedly pursuing them, but it seems like even late in fights she goes for takedowns. And it's not just spamming them. It's like here and there. They're not even like the greatest shots, but I almost think she does it just to mix it up with the striking. And I love seeing that. Even if you're not going to go for a lot of takedowns, just fighters that go for takedowns, especially like early in round one, just put it in your opponent's mind. You can get them to drop their hands. Just there's no reason to pretend you're going to box for 15 minutes. You should always just throw in a little something. Maybe it's not been on tape before. Just a new wrinkle. I don't think she can stop takedowns. So now my question to you is, does it mean Carolina's going to go for him? Because there's a path there if she does. And who's she training with now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Luan has made improvements in the grappling, but I don't really like her wrestling. I actually like her defensive grappling a little bit better. Like, she defends takedowns okay. Pudi does shoot like some nice traditional wrestling style takedowns to the hips and the legs, but Luan has shown like the ability to defend takedowns like on her hips and stuff like that. Like, she actually isn't like the worst open mat. Doesn't have like the worst open mat wrestling defense. And, she gets taken down, if you notice, like in the clinch a lot from like body locks. Like Petrovich was getting her down with like the body locks. And, I don't think, either girl's takedown defense is that great. But I will say, from what I see from Pudilova, when she does get flat on her back, I mean, there's no ability she doesn't really have to do a great job at getting up. I mean, you see it in the Aileen Perez fight. You see it in the Toledo Bernardo fight in Octagon. When she gets down flat on her back, I mean, she goes right to close guard, and there's not a lot of ability to get up. And I think of the two girls, that have a possibility of, getting up off their back, I trust Carolina to do that. And I think she's the better, has the better takedown defense, but the worst wrestling. So I feel like the grappling is, kind of 50-50. This fight could probably play out a bunch of different ways, but I really do like Carolina's cardio. And I think she's the better striker. So I favor her to win the fight. Yeah.
Yeah, the decision props. I mean, this fight's it's minus 350 to go over. So
yeah, I mean, it's
could be close margins,
Yeah, I mean, we can probably figure out. I mean, there's gonna be a split decision prop somewhere, and I think any split decision prop that's like, people complain like, oh, the split decision props suck now. They're plus 275. Well, if this goes to decision, what is the likelihood of this being a split?
It's going to feel like minus 150 at that point.
Yeah, it's like 40% this goes to split. Like anything.
I think people are upset because we were exploiting it because they hadn't really figured out how to price a split decision yet, because they didn't know how bad the judging was going to be, especially as criteria shifts. There are still judges out there that if you are grappling for 3.5 minutes, even if you get hit a bunch of times, they're going to give you the round based on control, even if it's not technically the criteria. It's almost like a force of habit. But let's get to a fight that I think is really interesting. I mean, it doesn't, maybe not to. I just think this fight's interesting. F it. I think it's interesting. If people don't, so be it. We got Loic Radzhabov against Trey Ogden. Ogden coming off, despite what you want to say about Kurt Holobaugh, who we'll be talking about in a little bit. Very impressive win over Kurt Holobaugh. And Radzhabov coming off a come from behind, sort of. A winning, then not so much, then winning again fight against Al Sawadi. An incredibly fun fight. They dug deep in the third round. Here's my question to you, and this is my favorite question of the week. Is there an art form in fighting these horribly boring stylistic fights because you have really good fight IQ?
So the interesting thing with Ogden, for me, it feels like that obviously is what makes him good. But also, we've noticed that there's times that he just doesn't show up. And I think that's the biggest downside, for him here. If you know what Loic's coming out with, right? He's going to try to kill you and take your head off, and he's going to fight as hard as he can and keep up a high enough pace as he can and wrestle you and, trying to hit you on the side of the head with big hooks, for 15. His cardio is not great. His pacing's not great. But you know what you're going to get. We've seen some Ogden performances that, he goes out there and it's like you watch him and, yeah, he has great fight IQ, but is it great fight IQ if you drag yourself into losing a 29-28? I don't think so. So I do have some concerns that, okay, his IQ is great, but what happens when a guy comes in there and he's the alpha male and you can't take him down and lay on top of him and it turns into a brawl? That's a good question because we've seen him kind of decide, I'm going to pack up my stuff and lose a decision. So I know, the IQ art form thing, like he does have a very high IQ, but he also has shown the ability to not want to fight. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword with him. Like he's almost too smart that he's like, I'm probably going to lose this. I'm good. I'm going to save myself.
Just don't get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's a double-edged sword with Trey. I think he's almost too smart for his own good.
All right. It's fair. But you like the Ogden side, if I'm not mistaken.
I do. Yeah, I do. I have a plus money number, but I do understand why. But I don't favor him in the matchup. I think it's like a 50-50 fight because one of these guys is going to get their game going. You know what I mean? I think this is a pretty toss-up fight. I think Ogden's either getting knocked out or he's, dictating the pace of the fight and staying on the outside and landing opportunistic takedowns in round 2 and round 3 when Loic gets tired. Because he's a good defensive wrestler until he gets tired. We saw it in the Salwati fight. He's, at the end of that round 2 is close until he gets tired and Salwati just lands the easiest takedown ever and Loic has no way he's even thinking about getting up. So I know a lot of folks who like the Loic side, but you have to look back at that Salwati fight. And, I'll be honest, I was there. A lot of folks who now are really bullish on Loic, I didn't see him there. So.
And he's gone.
And
he's back. You blinked out for a little bit.
Oh, really? Yeah, I just think this fight should be closely lined. It's one of these guys is going to get their game going. You know what I mean? And I think it's hard to predict that. So I think Pick'em's probably fine for this fight. My question for you though is, can Loic out alpha Ogden here?
I think he can, but to your point, it has to be early. I know he's coming off I get it. He's coming off a late KO, but I think that Ogden, and especially because these last couple of fights with Ogden, he's throwing more teep kicks. He looks like he's working the body a little more. I don't know if part of this is just as he's growing as a coach and his game plans are getting better. But I think he's going to look at this matchup and he's going to think, okay, I have to get him into deep water. I have to out-cardio him. And to your point, he can get these takedowns as the fight goes on. Radzhabov early on in this fight absolutely should be trying to out-alpha him. And if he does, he could put Ogden in a big pit, which leads me to think that maybe the best way to approach this would be a live bet on Ogden after 1. Or you can add to your position if you know Ogden lost the round, but he looks good, and maybe you see Loic slowing down at the end of the round. But yeah, from a physicality perspective, you have to like Radzhabov here. From a how does this fight look as it goes on, I would favor Ogden to make changes too and adapt. But we will move on, and this is I don't really know what to make of this fight, man. Got Miranda Maverick coming in. This fight's been moved around because of the Tracy Cortez, her taking the short notice main event last week against Diane Barbosa. Barbosa's coming off I'm going to say her name wrong, Ernesto Carasquete. I think I said it 4 different ways when she fought that week, and I got them all wrong. Great fight. That was a fantastic fight. Barbosa dug deep a little bit. Maverick, I think she's, well, this is my question to you then for this fight. I know that you and I are not like super bullish on Maverick in general. We were talking about this last week with breaking down the Jasudavicius fight. Does Maverick do anything particularly well other than being strong?
She has pretty good wrestling entries. Like her wrestling entries aren't too bad when she shoots like some
offensive
outside.
wrestling.
She shoots some nice head outside takedowns. I mean, you can tell she knows how to wrestle. Like she throws the overhand and then kind of shoots to the outside. Her wrestling's not bad, honestly. So yeah, I think that's what she does well. I think her boxing's okay. She's pretty athletic. She's young. She has some upside, but I think the best part of her game is probably just her offensive wrestling. I mean, there's not a lot of girls who know how to shoot like a traditional wrestling takedown in WMMA. Let's be real.
Okay. Any questions for the Lou?
I think the question is for me. I think the line's wide personally. I think the line. I don't know what it is now. I saw today it like blew out to minus 250 yesterday, and there's been immediate buyback on Barbosa, which kind of tells you all you need to know about how folks kind of view this fight from a market perspective. Like, they're not really favoring Maverick as much as, some folks are. We'll see as the week goes along.
Anywhere between 215 and 240 something right now, depending on
I mean, I favor Maverick at maybe 60, like at maybe 60%. So kind of shows you where I'm at from a betting perspective on this fight. But can Barbosa with her judo and jiu-jitsu style takedowns get on top here? That's my question.
Well, that's interesting too. Jasudavicius had all this success against Maverick by kind of just, I don't want to say bum rushing her, but making her fight, getting her against the cage. A lot of Jasudavicius' takedowns were against the cage, but it was the way she was moving Maverick and just getting her out of the center of the cage to where she needed her to get her takedowns. Barbosa, she strikes a little more than I think I would like in this kind of fight. I think if she was proactive early with going for a takedown, you and I have both discussed we don't love Maverick's takedown defense. I think it'll be there. But she seems to want to strike a little more than I'd like for her style in this matchup. If this becomes just, 10, 15 minutes of striking, I mean, Maverick's boxing isn't awful. I don't think she has the power that Barbosa does, but I would trust her. I definitely would trust her cardio down the stretch. So I would think Barbosa would have to get these takedowns early and often. Can she hold her down?
I guess in a low. We saw this last week with the Salikov and Ponzinibbio fight, right? A guy who historically has bad cardio, he gets like a pretty low pace kickboxing fight, and all of a sudden they look fine in round 3. Like I don't think Barbosa is gonna gas from a 15-minute tit for tat kickboxing fight here. I think there's going to be a lot of grappling involved, to be honest. So
that could gas her out pretty. I would think that would gas her.
Yeah, exactly. So I see her probably losing round 3 at like a high clip, unless she gets on top, right? And Maverick just chooses not to get up because we've seen it before. And Barbosa, when she does get on top, her control's pretty good. So I wouldn't be surprised if she can take the back. She's lost position before. But I do think her control is pretty good.
I think we both agree that Maverick at this price is just not a thing that we're interested in. It's not for me. Very interesting fight. Very interesting fight betting perspective wise. Brian Boom Keller, he's back against Cody Gibson. Gibson, sizable favorite on this card. The line, it's coming down a little bit, but still he's minus 190. As John Kelly would say, the comeback on Brian Kelleher, plus 165. Why don't you start this one off, since you're the one with an active play here?
Who's the one gonna... I mean, some of these fights, interesting. It's like, I almost feel like whoever wins this fight, personally, I think is the one that's having wrestling success. So who gets on top?
Well, I mean, I would think that Kelleher has better wrestling, but I don't think he's more proactive about it. I would think that Gibson's probably going to be the one initiating the grappling and the clinches, because I think on the feet, Kelleher is still dangerous. His boxing's good. I think that Kelleher, if he wants to be offensive about it, can top time Gibson and can control him. I think he's stronger. Yeah, I mean, this to me, this line is kind of crazy, and that's going to lead to my question to you: is how does Gibson cover a 2-1 favorite tag unless the line is just set because they think Kelleher's washed?
I don't know how he covers minus 200 unless he's rinsing him completely in the grappling and submitting him, like we've seen his past couple fights. But it's kind of challenging to figure out what level Kelleher is at right now because he's getting rinsed by, I know Garbrandt, he sucks, he's washed, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, Keller didn't look that bad in that fight, like he didn't look completely compromised and miserable. He got hit with a Cody Garbrandt overhand and knocked out. It's like, all right, well, what does that do? What does that do to Cody Gibson? Like, let's be realistic. What does Umar Nurmagomedov do to Cody Gibson? What does Mario Bautista do to Cody Gibson?
Right.
Both of
I mean,
these
it's a
guys
massive step down for Kelleher. It's a massive step down.
Both of these guys don't really have impressive wins on their resume, but at the end of the day, like Gibson, I mean, at least Kelleher has like a win over Hunter Azure, like he's got some decent wins a couple of years ago. Like what's Cody Gibson's best win? John Dodson in the past couple of years. Like, so I'm not really sure how we get to this line. I mean, Gibson's really, really hittable. The only way he covers his price is if he's like completely rinsing Kelleher in the grappling and somehow or lands like a flying knee, like he did in the Tough House. Outside of that, I don't really see how he wins this fight. Kelleher probably has the better cardio too. We've seen Gibson come out really hot and slow down in all of his fights. So I don't know how we get to this line. Yeah, it's Kelleher all day for me.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine being in a rush to bet a 36-year-old. They're not like trying to push Gibson to like he's not on like a path to a title.
Well, the only reason why he's here is because he had an exciting fight with Brad Katona. Like he lost his tough finale fight. That's the only reason he's here is because he lost.
And there is a talent in having an exciting fight with Brad Katona. That is a talent all on its own. We're moving on. This is probably my second favorite fight on the card. Next to the Steve Garcia fight. We got Haider Emil against Jung Young Lee. Jung Young Lee 5 years younger, but the more experienced guy. Haider Emil, I don't know if I want to say beating Fernie Garcia is impressive, but the way he beat him, certainly impressive. Fernie's a pretty tough dude. It's a very impressive win. I guess I'll start with the question here. Do you think that, because this is tricky because I have like 5 questions I want to ask, but who do you think fights for your money more at the back end of this fight?
I think that's the perfect question because here's the thing.
We're stopping the show after this question. Then it's done.
I think they're both gonna fight for your money at the end of this fight, but the real question is, can they both fight for your money at the end of this fight? Because with my opinion is Emil doesn't. Everybody thinks Emil has bad cardio. I've heard people say that. I don't think he has bad cardio. I think it's fine. I think his pacing sucks. And he comes out and tries to kill you. And if you fight at that pace, I'm sorry, but humans aren't allowed to fight at that pace or do anything that Haider Emil does early in fights at that pace. So he wears down his opponent in the process, tiring himself out. So his fights end up looking sloppy on the back ends. So I guess my answer is, I don't know, because in my opinion, if this does get in round 3, both guys are going to be tired.
And you said if. So let me do the follow-up question here. What do you think of the total being minus 115 either way with two guys that have never been finished?
So I bet the Lee under to in the builder fight because I thought there was some submission equity on the builder side, and Lee had obviously clearly had some finish equity, but I feel like Emil is just kind of one of those guys that's similar to builder where I bet you if he gets hurt, he survives. He just seems like he's tough and durable enough that he'll find a way to survive over 2.5. So I don't see him getting finished. And Lee's never been finished in his career. It seems like he has pretty solid durability. But, he hasn't really, he's fought some dangerous guys, but, to the level that I think, Emil might be able to push him, I don't know, his will's going to be tested here for sure. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. I know a lot of people like the under because they know it's going to be a violent fight, but it's challenging for me to get a read because I don't know what a finish looks like. It's going to have to be, in my opinion, a finish is like a low percentage thing, like a flying knee, I wouldn't say like a perfect left hook on the chin is like a high percentage thing, but like the perfect shot, the perfect knee, I don't know if any of these guys have like submission equity. Emil's a pretty wild grappler. Maybe Lee's got a pretty good arm bar. Maybe he could like snatch up an arm bar, but it just seems like fishing for me to find a read on this total,
It's a tricky fight for sure.
Yeah. I guess the question is who do you give the who do you favor if this goes to decision?
Well, that's the thing. So I talked with this. I did VB's show earlier today, and him and I are on different sides here. But mine is a price play, I think. And I know the money has come in on Emil. It still sort of feels like a pick'em style fight for me. Now, as far as like what does the third round look like and like who do I favor? If Emil does his style of like not bum rushing, but just, trying to get in close, he's going to negate Lee's reach advantage. And I think that's a very important factor here because Lee's boxing is decent. He throws straight punches. Like he's not one of these guys looping his punches. He actually uses his reach to his advantage. Whereas Emil, doesn't have like a typical boxing, style. He's winging bombs. Gilbert Melendez trained them, right? Yeah, there's a lot of like similarities with those two. So I think in the boxing, at least early, it's probably going to be Lee landing more shots. But what Haider Emil is good at is getting out of range and just if he gets in the clinch, he's probably the stronger guy. I don't know that he gets a lot of takedowns here. I don't know that he can get takedowns here. I think this thing is primarily standing. But Emil could be the one, and it feels like it to me, would be the one initiating clinches, getting him up against the cage, wearing on him for a minute or two here, a minute or two there. You mentioned people say his cardio is bad. I agree with what you said, and he's one of these guys that seems like he can fight through it. Some guys maybe they're gassed, but just know how to fight through it. So to answer the question accurately, what does this fight look like in the third round? If they're both tired, and they will be, I don't think there's any way anybody's fresh here. I could see Emil getting a takedown in the third round and just trying to conserve as much as he can. This is such a closely lined fight for me. I know the money came in on Emil when it opened. Lee opened at what, 260, 280? Jesus. That whoever made that line is fired. Because there's no way that should have been accurate here. But yeah, I think Emil can pull away. I think he has some interesting optics. I don't think he's going to get finished. I don't think anything can get finished here. This is a good split decision fight, too. Hate to say it. This is probably, and unlike the other ones, you probably get north of plus 400 here. So we'll see what like DraftKings and other books lay out for us. But Really cool fight, though. Very, very cool fight. Okay, now I gotta go to my guy, my other homeboy, Senor Perfecto Bill Algeo. He's facing Duho Choy. Algeo coming off an absolute, I don't know what happened to him against Kyle Nelson, man. I was there. It was, depressing sitting in Atlantic City for that. The Duho Choy coming off a split decision to Kyle Nelson, where, if I'm not mistaken, my notes are jumbled right now. There was a point deduction in the third round. So this is such a strange. I'll let you start off with a question for me, because this is just a really hard one for me to get a handle on. And I am an Algeo truther. So it's a hard one for me to get a handle on. Not a truther like he is politically, but certainly a Algeo truther, as he's a guy in the area.
I actually really struggle to figure out what to ask on this fight, because I just don't know. Choy's been out for a while, and I actually think Choy's pretty good. I like his skills. His striking's good. It's perfectly nice and basic, like he throws a good 1-2, calf kicks. Algeo, in my opinion, is like a tricky MMA style. So I guess the question for me is, can Algeo wrestle? Because I think that's his upside in this fight, is wrestling. I don't think the striking is minus, is 60 to 65% Algeo here at all.
Algeo has that Keith Jardine style of herky-jerky, awkward movement. He doesn't approach. He's kind of side to side, flailing his arms, and he has such an odd, awkward. It's not like it's hard to train for. It's almost off-putting to watch it. But what Algeo's biggest strength is not just he's a dog, man. Guy's got good cardio. And we've seen him late in fights. I mean, with Feely, he had a broken arm, and he just I can't get up, and he's active on the ground. But he loves spamming takedowns round 2, round 3. He's one of the guys that uses his cardio as a weapon. I think he probably gets pieced up in the first round. I think he's probably going to lose the first round at a pretty high clip. If he's going to get takedowns, it's going to have to come later in the fight. I think eventually he will get them, though, because even when you beat him in the first round, he just makes you go on your back foot so much. He really just is amazing. It's like what Billy Q used to do years ago. And now Billy Q is kind of, I think we're seeing some cracks in the armor with him. But it's what Billy Q did a lot of too, walking people down, making them back foot, making them throw a lot of volume. You look at the strike numbers against Algeo in first rounds, and it's insanity. I mean, people are just winging tons of bombs at him because he's there to be hit. I think Choy will do that. Choy's cardio doesn't seem terrible, but it's not Algeo's, and I think Algeo takes over in the back end of this fight. So my question to you, all that being said, it would make more sense to live bet Algeo than to bet him pre-fight if you were going to take the Algeo side, right?
No, I guess the question that I have for that is, because now that I've been thinking, Steve and I talked about this fight.
You and I talk to Steve way too much. Let's just get that out of the way.
I'm sick of this guy, actually. If you're watching this, Steve, I'm sick of you. Yeah.
Also, like the video and subscribe to the channel, Steve.
I would say, how does this fight finish?
I mean, it would have to be Algeo late if Choy gets tired, but even Algeo is not he's an attritional finisher. He's an opportunist. He's a very opportunistic submission grappler when you're gassed. But I don't see him getting but I didn't see him getting finished against Kyle Nelson. So what do I know, man? And he took some punches early, and this is what I worry about on the Choy side. Algeo took some punches early that did not look, Nelson wasn't one up. These were jabs that were getting through, and Algeo responded horribly. I know people complain about the late stoppage. I complained about it live because I like Algeo. But honestly, he ate, I think it was like 10 unanswered shots. It wasn't over 5 seconds, sure. But his hands were down the whole time. He's walking backwards. He's stanky legged, and he's getting hit with every shot. So would he have gotten finished? Could he have survived the round? Maybe. But also don't get hit that many times in a row, and we're not having this talk. Like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, he needed better defense. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I mean, you think you're gonna get to this fight? We'll move on after this. You think you're gonna get to a bet here pre-fight or no? Because I'm agree. I don't know that you get a finish here, and I would think it's Algeo like round 3 if there's a finish.
Well, I there's some props out. What do you think? What do you think this fight goes to the distance at? What clip do you think it goes to the distance at?
75-80%. I might be low.
No,
I think Algeo getting finished against Nelson is like a super outlier.
Well, you should go and look at what the GTD is right now. Because the over is like -170.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to play that or Algeo at the exact same price, I'd rather play Fight Goes.
Exactly.
But then it's going to be, yeah, I mean, honestly, Choy would have probably, I mean, look, you don't know how Algeo is going to be coming off getting KO'd. He didn't get violent. It wasn't a violent KO. It wasn't, he got.
Yeah.
But you don't know. I mean, he may like, you know how these guys, that was the first time he ever got knocked out. He may change his style. Maybe comes out more tentative. I don't know. That's a good look. I think the fight goes at the same price as an Algeo money line. It's probably a good way to attack it. But this is an interesting fight because I expected this one to be more of a Twitter war this week. I really did. But it seems like it's one-way traffic in terms of who people like. Cody Durden against Bruno Silva. Durden coming off. I mean, it's an acceptable loss to Tajir, but he didn't look great. And as I'm wont to see in a lot of Cody Durden fights, if he's kind of not front running and can't get his grappling going early, this is what happens. Then we got Bruno Silva, who, you know, Tyson Nam finishing Nam's always like super impressive. He's a dangerous guy on the feet, dangerous guy in the grappling. I don't know that I love his cardio. I don't have that concern as much with the Durden side here, but yeah. What do you got? What's your question here? Because what you ask is probably going to lead to me asking a very good follow-up or a very poor follow-up.
How does Durden deal with calf kicks?
I wasn't expecting that. That's actually a very good question.
Right, like that in my opinion, that's one of Bruno's best weapons, one of his best weapons on the feet. And I feel like the grappling's competitive. Like I think Silva's a pretty competent grappler. You know, you just go back, you can just go back and watch the Tajir fight and see how that grappling went. And those grappling exchanges went, you know. Obviously it looks like Tajir's maybe improved a little bit, but you know, I thought he did a better job in the grappling than Durden did personally. So if I think the grappling is competitive, and Bruno's best weapon, one of his best weapons on the feet is his calf kick, in my opinion, I want to know if Durden sees it and can check it. I guess Carlos Mota has a decent calf kick. I think that would probably be the fight for me to go back and look at this week.
Well, Gutierrez would be the only guy that really threw a lot of them against Durden, and he had a lot of success. That's a fight that Durden lost. And that's almost 4 years. That's 4 years ago. So
that was that was the draw. He 10-8'd him in round 1.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he 10-8'd him. Durden 10-8'd him in round 1. He took his back and 10-8'd him like off the literally as soon as the fight started, and then he lost the last two rounds.
So I guess we don't. I guess I can't answer the question. Incomplete, to be determined, because even Charles Johnson did. I mean, well, Charles Johnson didn't get any separation, but we never got to see it. We never got a chance to see him throw any kicks in that fight either.
Well, yeah, he's not really a calf kicker though. You know, not like Silva is. Charles is a good kicker, but he's not blasting calf kicks like
his kicks are to set up as boxing. Yeah, Silva's kicks are like to destroy a human being.
Yeah, he's not going to be ripping off calf kicks like Bruno will though.
So here's my question to you: Is I mean, I think that the first part of this is just a state. The first part is just a statement. I think if there's any finishing equity here, it's going to be on the Silva side. What does a Silva decision look like to you?
A war that he comes out in front of and lands the bigger shots, and the grappling
just survives all of it.
Yeah, he just has and they just have they go to war, you know what I mean? And the grappling is somewhat competitive. Like, I think Durden winning a decision here is him like being competitive on the feet and somehow, getting in like a body triangle to score, like to win like the end of a round, you know what I mean? Controlling grappling positions for extended periods, while also staying competitive on the feet.
Yeah, we really haven't seen like improvements on the Durden striking, but he also hasn't really been in the styles of fights where it's going to be tested. He's fought guys where it was going to be either Tajir, where like that fight was going to be in the grappling realm and there wasn't a thing anybody could do about it, or against Charles Johnson, where he's like, I have no need to test my striking here. Like, I don't want any part of it. Doesn't make sense for me to do it. So
yeah, that's the thing. No, if Durden starts picking up momentum on you, though, I mean, he's really a hard guy to kind of like, you know what I mean, to stop.
Oh, he can he chain him for days. He'll chain takedowns.
Yeah, going on you. So and then he does a good job at chaining his striking into his wrestling. So yeah, that's why he's so successful at it, because he can just keep rinsing it on you. You don't know what's coming next, All of a sudden you get hit with an overhand and then he's shooting a double and then dumping you on your head.
You think the line's right? You think the line's pretty accurate here? Minus 120 range for Durden?
Yeah, I thought the under is kind of interesting, though, because, I mean, Durden's not the worst finisher. I just don't know what a finish looks like from him, to be honest. But, the Silva ITD, I don't think it's crazy to see that Bruno couldn't finish him, and then whatever Durden finish equity at the under would be cool. This is going to be a violent fight. Like, I know it's flyweight, but it's like plus 200, and these guys are going to fight for your money. So there's no way the under looks like, in my opinion, there's no way like a plus 200 to under here looks like a terrible bet, just with how Bruno fights.
Yeah, the only way it looks bad, I guess, is if Durden's getting takedowns easily and not really doing anything with them. But even then, I mean, Durden is active on top. Like, if he has top control, he's active. He's not just content to lay and pray. And not only that, but like, I like that look, because what if Silva hurts him pretty bad in the first? Like, what if Silva clearly wins round one? Then Durden really can't get away with like that kind of game. He's going to know, all right, now I'm down a round. Now it comes down to, he can't be just laying on him for 10 minutes.
Yeah, and if Durden's down a round, he's going to be coming for your head. Like, this guy knows, he knows what to do, and he's in there. Like, he's there to fight,
That under is an interesting look. At plus 200, that might be something I'm very interested in. This is not a fight I'm interested in. I'm just going to get this out of the way. Kurt Holobaugh against Kang Krzyzewski. Holobaugh getting a lot of love as an underdog. He's coming off, obviously, and it's a very different style fight. He's coming off a very uninspiring performance against Trey Ogden. Krzyzewski, I mean, he lost to Brenner, the flavor of the last year. Looked all right on the Contender Series. I'll start with the question here. If Holobaugh wrestles, he looks like a favorite, right? And it's an if. It's a big if. But if he wrestles.
Is he really going to wrestle, though?
That's why I said if. If he wrestles, does he look like a favorite? Is he a pretty big favorite?
I mean, I guess. Not really. Okay. I don't think his wrestling's that good. I don't think.
Why is there a lot of love for him as the dog this week?
I guess because Kanyan, he does slow down a little bit because in his fights, and I guess Kurt does have like pretty good pace in his fights, when it is standing, and he can kind of just bully his way into boxing range. He's got nice calf kicks. His striking game is somewhat educated. He's big lightweight, but he's 39 now. Has no get-up game. Obviously, Kanan is not the worst grappler, and his Muay Thai striking is pretty good. The fight, I favor the fight to go under, but the issue is like Holloway has been historically like really durable, for the most part. So it's hard for me to think about what a finish looks like from the Krzyzewski side, but I feel like he's dangerous enough that he could probably find a way to finish this fight, and so could Holloway. Like we've seen Kanyan Chen twice in his career, but the issue is like both of those fights, like the Brenner fight's on short notice, right? He had like a week's notice. Like if you look at him on the scale, he looked like he was hardly even training for the fight. Like he looked out of shape, and he gets knocked out by Brenner in round one. Like I don't really take anything from him, from that fight as like a negative. So I'm surprised that the line is what it is personally. Because I think this is a fight where you just bet the younger guy. You know what I mean? Like both guys, have pretty good skill sets. One happens to be like 5, 6 years younger, and the other guy has absolutely no get-up game. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I just want to add that, like, I don't know if Krzyzewski will even really attempt grappling at all. But like, it's not even just the Ogden fight. Like Hubbard, like it's just guys are getting this guy down pretty easily. And to your point, the age has to matter here. It's a huge factor. I mean, Holloway is like 37 going on. He's not like a young 37 either. Like this is a battle tested, like grinder from the regionals and from his previous runs here. So I'm not really interested in getting to a bet here, but I say that and it's Monday, and then on Thursday I'll be like, oh my God, I have 2 bets on this fight. So you never know. But I guarantee I'm going to have at least 1 bet on this fight. Guarantee you. I have not bet it yet, and I probably missed my favorite opportunity, but this is my favorite fight on the card. We should have just talked about this fight the whole show, but that's probably not good content just to break down one. We got Steve Garcia, the Mean Machine, against Sungwoo Choy. I didn't understand VB's reference earlier, posting pictures of Sting when and realized that was his nickname. But I definitely like that our buddy Poppy thought that was the Undertaker. Sorry, dude, you're getting called out for thinking that was the Undertaker. Like, come on, man. You gotta be a wrestling fan to know that. Brah. Shout out to Poppy and VB, dude. Our dudes. Okay, so
he deserves prison for that.
See, I knew the show would work out. We're already paying the rent with the show. I'll lead off with the question here, because like I know my heart wants to just load up the Brinks truck on Steve Garcia because he's been so good to me. I know I want to do this. I know if I'm drinking, I'm going to do this. But here's my question for you. And this is market based. This is not style based. Breaking down the style of Steve Garcia's, I don't think I need to really break down his like maniacal style. Is Steve Garcia the kind of guy you only really want to bet as an underdog? Because he's been an underdog his last 3 fights and he's come through. The Chase Hooper fight was predicated on them overvaluing Chase Hooper, and then he just got blitzed immediately. But the Melk Costa fight was super interesting because I thought Costa was a more skilled guy. I still bet Steve. But now we get Garcia as a favorite. And the last time he was a favorite was against Mahashate, who was still super raw, but a guy whose one best attribute is he's got power. And it did not go well for the Mean Machine. So does it matter to you, or do you think he's just that kind of guy where he fights 50-50 and you just only really feel comfortable with him as a dog?
Yes. That's the only answer. Like, I was talking about this to somebody else, that it's like, you just watch him fight, and then you say, why is he a plus 2x, 175, 2xx underdog to these guys, when he's good at every aspect of MMA and he could kill you at any moment? Like, why is he this big of an underdog with his fighting style and his skill? He's not a bad fighter. Like, people think that Steve Garcia like can't grapple, like, he has no other skills besides just being able to bonk you. It's like, this guy can wrestle. He's a good defensive grappler too. He has submissions. Like, his ground and pound is nasty. Like, he has good cardio too for the pace he pushes. He's got good cardio too. Like, the hate on this guy has always been kind of crazy to me. But yeah, you're right. Like, there's no way you bet him as a favorite. The issue is, though, he could absolutely just steamroll Choy, like, easily. I think he's got him covered in a lot of areas, to be honest with you. Like, I think he's the better wrestler. I think he's, got better cardio. I think both guys don't have great chins. I think Choy is the much more technical striker, obviously. He's the better striker. It looks prettier. MMA striking is weird, though. We always think about, like, the guy who looks prettier in MMA. It makes them the better striker. It just means you're more technical. It doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, it's, how you mix it up, how you mix your martial arts up, if you're a good striker or not, and, how you fight. So I want to bet Steve like you. Like, I just want to back up the KO prop, for every single dollar in my bank account. But yeah,
it's not even good odds, dude. It's plus 125 for the KO. Like,
yeah, but we'll probably get a better KO prop on, like, FanDuel for, like, KO 1-2 on FanDuel. You just back up the whole account on it.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you can't play 2-3 here.
No,
as much as I love my 2-3s, I'm not comfortable with it. Like,
yeah, I feel like the only way to play Garcia, and, like, I like Choy. Like, Choy could probably clip him with a check left hook as Steve rushes in, or like a straight right down the pipe. It could be,
like my Blackshear bet. You mean like my Blackshear bet?
Yeah, where he just gets
18 seconds.
Yeah, 1-2 down the pipe and just dies. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's weird. I mean, Garcia's been dropped, and his chin is obviously really suspect, and Choy hits really hard.
He's knocking down everybody in his fights. That's the thing. Like,
yeah, but he gets knocked down a bunch too. So, like, even the Jarno fight, like, he won, like, his last fight, but he also almost got uppercutted into oblivion. Yeah. And then Jarno, his calf, like, pretty much got destroyed on like 1 or 2 calf kicks. So he couldn't finish up the fight as strong as he would have, and he probably could have won that fight. So I don't know. It's an interesting fight. Like, it's an interesting line. Obviously you lean under 1.5, but who's to say Choy gets uncomfortable with Steve swinging on him, and we burn, like, a ton of clock cage wrestling or grappling, like that. That would be a possible outcome. That is, somehow.
If they wrestle and Garcia gets on top, he's not gonna worry about position. He's just
gonna try to
hammers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for me on this, other than, like, how poor am I going to be if I do what I'm saying I'm probably going to do?
I'm worried for me too. If I get, like, a plus 200 Steve Garcia KO 1-2 prop, or just, like, Steve Garcia round 1, round 2, if it's, like, a decent line combined, like, it, like, I don't know. I'm worried for what I might do. Yeah,
I have found that as much as FanDuel puts out these, like, off market, like, these lines that are, like, always a little favorable, we'll say, Fanatic Sportsbook doesn't seem to. I don't know where they're getting their lines from, because I see like 30 to 50 cent differences, and I'm talking on just like totals. More I'm like, and it's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's never accurate, ever. It's either like, I mean, for other sports, it's even crazier, but like, yeah. So if you're watching this, you probably know, shop around. But I'm with you. The round one, round two, I mean, honestly, you know we're probably not even getting plus 200 here, but yeah. So now Garcia decision's what's going to come through, right? Oh, brother. All right. We got the co-main event. We got Brad Tavares against the Iron Turtle, Jun Young Park. And Tavares, look, maybe his durability's starting to go. Jun Young Park, man, I don't know how he lost that Muniz fight. That was a weird look. You start with the questions on this one, because I do have a lean and I kind of hate it.
Oh man, I don't really like this fight, but I guess my question would be, who's the better striker?
Tavares. And yeah, I don't even need to. I think Jun Young Park's striking is solid. He's technically sound and he's got some power, but he leaves himself open so much. His head is always on the center line. If you watch him, Tavares at least definitely moves around more. Jun Young Park doesn't throw enough kicks for my liking either. It's just pretty much it's more boxing than anything else. So here's my return question to you, because it's related to what you asked me. Tavares' takedown defense has historically been pretty good. If Jun Young Park can't get him down, how does he cover minus 180 range here in a pure 15-minute striking affair?
I mean, you just answered that question, which is why I asked it. So we're on the same page. I mean, Brad, obviously,
I don't want to bet Tavares. Like, I always want to bet the Turtle. They made all my favorite guys like juiced favorites on this card, and I'm like,
well, yeah, it's like your guys that you want to bet are juiced favorites because they've come through, and the market perspective is like, oh wait, by the way, they're actually pretty good. You know what I mean? So, but here's the thing. Now that it's, in my opinion, this is what I'll say. It feels like in that perspective, it's like the C-Rod, not to be like hindsight, but it's like the Christian Rodriguez line from last week. You know, he comes through a couple times. Everybody is like,
now he's a big favorite.
Yeah, I don't know if this guy's that good. And then in his the matchup against the biggest guy he's ever fought, the only striker he's ever fought in his entire career with a fully well-rounded MMA game, he hasn't fought a complete fighter yet that's bigger than him like this, and he's a minus 250 favorite. So, I mean, you're kind of seeing it with like Garcia this week, right? It's like, when have you ever?
All my favorite fighters have one thing in common: they're very hittable.
Yeah,
like
it's like
Algio, Billy Q, Darren Elkins. Like, they're just all insanely hittable fighters.
Well, that's what's crazy for like this Garcia fight, right? It's like the time to bet Steve Garcia was Chase Hooper at plus 275 or 250 when I bet him, or whatever it was. It was, plus 175, 180 to Shai Lin. It was
I had him round one. I had him round one KO against Hooper.
I played the under, and I played the under, and I played I played Fight Doesn't Go, and I played Garcia.
And I'm pretty sure Monk's had Chase Hooper in like all his lineups for DraftKings. So I was like, yes.
Oh, come on. That's not very nice. Don't bring that up.
I was like, no, this is in the Iron Man with Gordo. I'm like, I got to beat him. I'm going against them. I got to beat him. Dude, Hooper was like 9,400 like salary. I'm like, I can't play this guy at 9,400. Got to get out of here. It's a massive favorite.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess in this matchup, it's like it seems a lot closer than the line indicates. Once again, because they're assuming that Tavares, it's public perception that this guy is washed. So
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what it looks like, especially if it's like a lower pace striking contest. I don't think him being washed is gonna play.
I mean, what you have to bet here, if it gets to a certain price, is like it's got to be Tavares' decision. Like if you get the if you lean Tavares, just whatever the best line is, when props come out. I feel like that if I get a big line on Tavares' decision, I'm going to be there to
plus 240.
Yeah, that's decent, right? But we're probably going to get something, way better than that.
That's what it just says on Fight Odds. And then I happened to, I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't help it. But I had to see what the Jin Young Park submission was. I can't bet it, but I had to know that it was plus 900 because it does at least. Yeah, I know. I'm not betting it. I just wanted to know. But we're going to move on to the main event. And if you guys have hung in here this whole time, I know I appreciate you. Dogfather appreciates you. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel so we can keep the show going. It will get better and better visually. He's going to get more and more comfortable throwing barbs my way, which he knows I like. He's doing the vote. He's doing Madonna. We got all sorts of fun stuff planned. I'm even behaving myself. It's crazy. We got the main event. Mondo Lemos against Verna Jandiroba. Lemos a slight underdog right here. Verna coming off another fight that I was at, because that was the same card in AC, where, you know what, I'm just going to give you like a softball here and say, before we get into this fight, did Verna win because Loopy just loopied it? Like loopied the shit out of that fight? And it's like, you know what, let's play leg locks, like in the second round. Like,
I personally think Verna's just underrated.
Okay.
I think Verna's just underrated. I mean, her grappling is good, man. I mean, she was a big dog to, Marina Rodriguez when she had a clear grappling path. She was a massive dog to Lupi Godinez, who never separates herself in any of her fights. The market's consistently incorrect on Verna Jandiroba in a lot of her fights.
And now she's the favorite.
And now she's the favorite all of a sudden, so... I mean, obviously we're here from the betting perspective. We don't really care about making a prediction, but because at the end of the day, we don't make bets off of predictions. We make bets off of percentages, because it's just like investing. It's like the stock market. I don't bet to win every bet. I don't expect that to happen. If you think you're going to win every bet, you're an idiot. You should do something else.
I don't know, man. I read Twitter and there's dudes that have never lost a bet ever. It's crazy, man.
I'm the greatest.
And what's weird is they're the guys that have the worst. They have the worst internet of all of them. That's the crazy part. They never lost a bet, but their internet's terrible. Like, just invest in better internet, man. You never lose. It's worth the investment. Get off DSL, bruh.
Well, one of my favorite things that people do is just like being really overconfident about stuff, and it's like, dude,
a lock.
It's like, oh, so and so isn't losing. It's like, I've heard you say this before. Like, stop! Don't say that.
I'm not going to mention a name because he's not a capper. He's somebody that is a fan of a lot of these shows, and he's a nice guy. So I'm not going to mention his name. But he is notorious for going on these streams and saying, not only that is somebody going to win with absolute certainty in the most volatile sport out there, but that you're an idiot for betting the other side. And he's talking about like minus 800 favorites most of the time. But when that favorite, like when Basharat lost to Albazi, there was no accountability when Albazi won. There's no accountability. So our friend Brady held him accountable on stream, put him in chat. He goes, you know what? You do this every week. You tell me I'm an idiot. And he put his comment on this. And he's a great sport about it. He's like, I was wrong. He's a great sport about it. But to your point, especially in this, dude, this isn't like the Sixers against like you and I playing basketball where There's no line. Like, whatever the money line is, it's safe. You and I are not beating them. This is a sport where we've seen, dude, Brett Primus beat Michael Chandler because Chandler took one step and tore his ACL. We have a rematch coming up next week where a dude lost by just planting his foot wrong. It's such a volatile sport. This is not there's a lock thing. In any other sport where it's a team sport, it's not ideal if the quarterback gets hurt, but doesn't mean they play without a quarterback the rest of the game. They got a guy, they plug him in. So,
well, the one thing that I've noticed personally, and this is just from like being a better and thinking, most of my thing right now is my reads have been solid, and I think that comes from being mentally, on more of a neutral plane, where if you're emotional about a bet because you want to be right, you've automatically stepped off the path to being consistent. Because when that bet loses and you're emotionally attached to it, the next bet you make, you're going to want to win again because you like to be right. The main focus for us in the show is to kind of just look at things from the perspective that we see in the market, what we see from a big, not only like a micro and macroeconomic, almost like, obviously micro and macroeconomic perspective from how the betting market works and how bettors are choosing to move the lines within these markets and how we see it. And if you're going to be emotional and, be overly confident and then your bet loses, that's when you start to see people go up and on the downswing. Because they get attached to winning. Yeah, they get attached to their bet because the only reason so-and-so is on that show talking like that or whoever is because they want to be right. And at the end of the day, I don't care about being right. I care about making money, and betting is about numbers. So if you can put those two things together and leave everything else in the past, I could care less if Brian Kelleher is watched this week. He's plus 200 against a guy who I think is equally as watched. I'm going to make that bet 10 out of 10 times. And if he dies in the first round, I could care less. And if he wins, I'll be happy. But then I'll move on.
I have tons of experience not being right because I've been in a relationship for years and years and years. So I know what it's like to not be right. So I take that approach into the gambling realm where I'm like, oh, I wasn't right. I'm not shocked. But let's get to the more important question for this one. So the birthday girl's looking at me. She knows I haven't been right, except for that comment. Then I was right. So we're talking about Verna being underpriced in the market, now going to a favorite. So she's minus 140 here. I mean, this is not a hot take because the market thinks she will have a lot of grappling success in this fight. Do you think Verna can do this for 3 out of the 5 rounds and survive, or can she do it for 25 minutes? Can she have the success that Duran had, at least maintaining top control?
I think she can definitely control Lemos, but she doesn't really have a get-up game. But the issue is, like, how long can it last? And then the second question is, maybe she's tired in round 4, but like she just falls into like a trip takedown from a body lock, and then Lemos is on her back, and you're like, oh, I was so close. I think that's what's going to be tough here. I feel like Lemos could probably kill her at any moment, though. Verna's striking defense is pretty absent at times, and she's not very explosive or athletic, which Lemos does bring to the fight. She's a fantastic counter striker and could probably clip her or counter her when she comes in. Just has a pretty good guillotine, too. I'm not sure she's going to have a lot of success with it because Verna doesn't shoot traditional wrestling style takedowns. She's mostly like a jiu-jitsu style takedown, type of fighter. A lot of body locks, a lot of trips. She does have some decent cage wrestling, though. I do like her cage wrestling a lot. But yeah, it's hard to predict how this fight's going to play out. It does feel like it's dog or pass, though, from a market perspective. And it does feel like if Lemos and Duran was pick'em, why is this not pick'em? Like, it's a 5-round fight. Lemos has pretty good cardio, and Verna does not. And
what
then,
do you think of the total being set at 2.5?
It's just one of those fights where I have no idea what's gonna, like, I don't know. I have to do a lot of work on this one because, I mean, couldn't this play out like a million different ways?
Yeah, I mean, Lemos early as possible, but Verna is pretty durable. I think Lemos can defend submissions, but I mean, I can't underrate how good Verna is, especially if she's got her back early. And we've seen Lemos submitted standing. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities how this could play out. I don't know if that was a question, because if the question is, are there a million possibilities here? The answer is an absolute yes. I don't know. I'm leaning Lemos. I think that she can stay defensively responsible enough on the ground to fight off submissions. And I think that every second this fight's on the feet, it's clear cut for her. So we'll see. I mean, I like the championship experience, a 5-round experience. I know this isn't a championship fight, but she's main evented. She knows co-main evented, but she's main evented. So I think it's an interesting fight.
She's shown good cardio in 4 and 5.
She wasn't tired in round 5 of that fight. The problem is she was just outskilled. It's that simple. That wasn't I'm so tired anything's taking me down. That was a levels fight. It just happened to be. But that is it. That is this card. Strangely enough, it's the exact same amount of time that the happy hour takes. It's always like an hour and 15. Be 17 fights, can be 8 fights. I don't know, man. But we made it for our debut show. I'd like to thank my co-host, Dogfather, for spending his Monday evening with me. Dogfather, please tell the people where they can find you, what you're doing. I know you do some spaces here and there, sneaking some spaces in. Tell the people what you're up to, man. I
mean, yeah, I'm on a couple Discords. I'm on Couch Warrior Pod's Discord, where Couch and I have been friends for a bit now. And then I'm in the Big Brain Discord with Big Steven and a couple other of good friends of mine, my internet friends. So you can find me in those Discords. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me whenever you watch this show. And, you can find Lou Betya sad because he no longer bet on soccer.
Well, you got kind of screwed on the one with the corners. I think FanDuel kind of screwed you over on.
Well, that made me never bet. That made me realize that I'm never doing this ever again. I was like, the one soccer bet I make, I lose because since it's not I lose off a.
I don't know why they phrase it like more than 10 as opposed to just a 9.5 or a 10.5. It's really bizarre. It's like they phrase it for situations like this where you're like, I'm never betting this sport again. But you can find me all over the place, man. I have a busy week tomorrow doing a show with, I don't know when you're watching this, so it might be today at that point. But doing a show with Brady this week, doing props to consider this week with VB, whose name, despite how many times I ask, is not short for Visual Basic. It's a joke that will never get old. It's me using my IT background, of course. Thursday at midnight, each and every week on this channel, the happy hour. And look out for some crazy, weird ideas I got coming on this channel. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. We will see you next week for UFC 304 Aspinall Blades. And boy, oh boy, do I have some questions for Dogfather about that main event. See you soon, guys.